I'm a deputy fire marshal with the City of Billings. I've been a first responder for about 7 years.
I'm a paramedic at AMR, and I've been there for 10 years.
I'm a police officer with the Billings Police Department, and I've been a first responder for 12 years.
I am a mechanic and a record driver. I've been in the business for roughly 21 years. My wife and I have been in business for ourselves for about 3.5.
I'm a critical care paramedic. I have been involved in the EMS field for 31 plus years.
I work for Sabanye Stillwater Mine as a safety coordinator, and I serve on the Warden Volunteer Fire Department as well as on the mine rescue team and Department of Natural Resources as a wildland firefighter. I've been a first responder for over 10 years.
I've been a firefighter, volunteered in Joliet 10 years, Billings Fire Department for 9 years, firefighter, engineer.
I am a teacher at Red Lodge Elementary School. I teach 4th grade math and science. I've been a first responder for 4 years.
I'm a deputy sheriff with the Yellowstone County Sheriff's Office. I've been a deputy for 8 years.
I'm a Billings police officer. I work the patrol division and I've been doing it for 4 years.
When I was 20 years old, I was in the Marine Corps and I was gearing up to go to Iraq. We were convoying to Arizona for desert warfare training, and I remember looking out the window of the truck and seeing the back seat window of a Suburban roll down, and this little boy holds an American flag out, sitting in his car seat waving at us. And right then and there, I knew I wanted to continue to serve.
I was new to the Red Lodge area, and it was my way of getting involved and creating my own little family.
I wanted to be like my cousin. He was a first responder, firefighter. And what little kid doesn't want to be a first responder? Everybody does, and to help people. It's just the adrenaline rush.
I spent 26 years in retail management. I had a couple friends that worked for the sheriff's office who approached me about becoming a reserve deputy. I entered the program, really liked it, and continued on.
I was pregnant out to here with my 3rd child when I decided I needed a change. I'd always been interested in firefighting as a career, and I had a really great mentor friend who was a captain on the department who helped guide me and help me get there.
I was in college in Bozeman, and I got to class early one day and saw an EMT flyer on the wall, and I thought it sounded cool. My dad was an EMT when he was a younger adult, so I called him and he told me to take the class, so I did, and then moved back to Billings, got a job as a tech in the ER, and then hired on at AMR shortly after, and I fell in love with the pre-hospital setting.
I did construction, and I was a personal trainer at one time before, and then I made the change to become a police officer.
I was studying journalism, and in the summers I would work as a law enforcement park ranger, and in doing that I became more interested in helping people and being the doer rather than being behind the scenes and writing about the people doing things, and that sparked my interest in law enforcement as a career.
I got married to my wife, and her dad was in the business, and so I had a new career as soon as I got married.
My sister-in-law asked me if I wanted to take a class with her, EMT Basic. And I did, and I became an EMT, and I was hired by Bighorn County Ambulance.
You have to be quick on your feet, a logical thinker. Being a type A personality doesn't hurt. You have to be able to go with the flow, but also know what you're doing.
Really got to know math, your geometry for angles. Skills, you just got to know where to hook up, what not to hook up, what's going to bend and what's not going to bend.
I think you need to be fast in your decision making. You need to be gentle and caring when you arrive on scene. You could be at a very simple call, like on a lost dog or something of that matter, or you could be on a very dangerous, important call where it could be life-threatening to the caller or yourself.
Kindness, compassion, caring for others, doing your job to the best of your ability.
You have to have a sense of humor, and you have to be flexible and be able to just roll with what comes at you. A lot of what you'll see can be challenging, and some of it'll be funny, some of it'll be frustrating, but you just have to go with it.
You have to be caring, compassionate, and at times courageous.
You got to be smart at your job, smart in every aspect of it.
It takes strength, resilience, honesty, and a sincere desire to help people.
Lots of commitment, lots of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of sleepless nights.
Emotional intelligence, empathy, sympathy, and a good listener.
fire and EMS is a big part of my life, and my students know that, and they recognize that in me. And every time they see me on the street with my fire t-shirt on or in my EMS gear, they always come up to me and say hi and how awesome they think it is that I'm a part of the community in this way. And to me, that's a really touching memory.
On the way to this interview today, we were paged out for a vehicle accident, which turned into a grass fire, which turned into a manhunt. And we rescued a guy that was ejected from his vehicle and about to be burned over by a grass fire. And come to find out, there was another guy hiding from the police, and they ended up finding him too. So it was a very interesting morning.
The last rainstorm that we had down there in front of the Metro, and this young lady got stuck, and I pulled her out, and she was on the phone with her dad through her Bluetooth, and her dad really said, if you hurt my daughter, I'm gonna kill you. I said, you don't have to worry about that. I'm not here to hurt anybody, I'm here to help. And Dad was really, really appreciative of that.
I responded to a residence where I ran in and observed a 2-year-old unresponsive, blue in the face and not breathing with his family around him. I immediately performed CPR and was able to successfully dislodge an item of food that had been obstructed in the child's airway. And that moment was very happy and memorable to me.
I have a grandson who had a child, and the baby was probably about 1 to 2 days old. And I was at IHS, and it was my turn to take a transfer, and I picked up this child, and it was an instant bonding with that kid. And I have always had that, and had that in my heart from that day.
Not too long ago, we had roughly 28 fires in 35 days or so, and that's people's worst day of their life. And it's awesome to use your skills and your knowledge to help people on the worst day of their life. Fighting that fire, saving property, saving animals, saving loved ones.
I was dispatched to a stabbing. Upon my arrival, I noticed a male outside in the alley bleeding profusely from his leg. I used my shears to cut off his pants and noticed a femoral bleed. I used a tourniquet to apply to the upper leg, and then the bleeding wasn't quite stopped yet. And so I packed the wound with some gauze and then wrapped it to ultimately stop the bleeding, and he is alive today.
Several years ago, I was posted in the Heights with my EMT partner, my paramedic student, and we were just killing time between calls. And so we were trying to do backflips off the swings, because I used to be able to when I was a kid, and I landed right on my head and broke my neck and tore my ligament. But luckily I had my EMT partner and my paramedic student there, so I had immediate care, great time to break my neck.
I'd say the darker times are when children are involved. I went to a suicide call where a young kid, approximately 13 years old, had taken his own life and hung himself from his bunk bed and left a note to the family that he just couldn't do it anymore. The hardest part by far is trying to console a parent in that dire time in their life, and doing the best you can to try and help them during those dark times in such a short period of time that you're with them.
As a coroner, I've investigated somewhere around 600 deaths and come in contact with many family members at the worst time of their life of losing a loved one. One particular one that I can remember is a fatality that occurred on the interstate where it was being investigated, and the family showed up on scene after hearing about it. And I can remember the wails and the cries and their reactions to what was going on.
When I first came to Crow, I didn't really know anyone, but you develop relationships. And there have been many cases where you're taking care of somebody and they don't survive. And it's heart-wrenching and it hurts.
There was a fatal accident in Laurel where the young lady got on the interstate the wrong way. She had a head-on collision with a semi-truck, and she was still there when I got there. And to this day, you always picture that situation when you go over that bridge in Laurel.
Pediatric deaths are the hardest calls for me. When I was about 8 months pregnant with my second baby, I had a SIDS call for a 9-week-old infant, and that one was very hard for me.
A really hard one would be young teenage girl in a car accident with head trauma and blood to her ear that did not make it. I'm probably still carrying that one with me.
Last year, after the Harris fire, one of our firefighters, Dan Stephenson, was severely injured after a burnover and spent months recovering in Salt Lake City. And he was a mentor to me, someone who I've been on every single fire with since I started in fire. And to see him go through that and experience such a traumatic event was really difficult for me.
I went on a call a while back where a teenage girl was killed in a car accident. The teenage deaths and child deaths and injuries are pretty universally the hardest things to deal with. I realized the day after that I am acquainted with the mother. She's a friend of mine, so that made it even harder.
Shortly after my boys were born, we had a head-on collision in Huntley that involved two young men, and both perished in that accident. And I'll never forget listening to that father who was on scene crying for his little boy.
A former lieutenant with the sheriff's office wrote me a touching letter with words of advice in it prior to entering the profession. In that letter, he made it very clear to state that don't cover your ass, do your job.
Slow down, move over. There's people that are working out there that want to go home to their families. If you see water, turn around. Don't put yourself in a situation that you really can't get out of.
I've always been told that in fire you have to keep your head up and keep your eyes in front of you and your mind thinking 12 steps ahead.
Treat everybody with a smile, and it costs $0 to be nice.
Don't bring this job home.
I received some advice from my husband, and he said, be kind, compassionate, don't judge people until you walked in their shoes.
There are going to be tough times and there are going to be good times. Just stick with it. Never give up.
One of the best things that I get from this job is an opportunity to teach my kids life lessons. And we see a lot of people abusing drugs within the community, so I take those stories home, such as last night I got to see a woman biting off pieces of her own arm thinking she was biting me, and then I ended it with #don't do drugs.
So I was ordering food for lunch at a fast food restaurant, and the employee behind the counter had wanted a date and asked for my number, but I then told him 911, and then we both laughed about it.
Several times I've gone and jump-started certain delivery trucks in town, and it's because they didn't put the dang thing back in park.
It was the last day of school and the kids were having their little recess deal in the park. I was training to be an engineer, so my engineer and captain were up in the bucket of the ladder, and I was pumping water. Well, I turn around, look over, I might have a little too much pressure, and they were maybe hitting kids and maybe knocking them over, rolling them a little bit because I had too much pressure.
One afternoon, we had a pretty gruesome car accident that we had to go do cleanup of the scene afterwards, because that's part of our job. And then later that night, at about 3 a.m., we had another car accident, and there was a salamander randomly walking away from the vehicle. So I told my captain I was gonna go pick it up, and then it totally grossed me out, and I didn't want to pick up this salamander. He made a lot of fun of me for the fact that that was the thing I couldn't handle.
Last year we were called to a structure fire for mutual aid, and while we were assisting with the other departments, we were on the porch about to make entrance into the home when one of the other department's firefighters took a step backwards and the porch was covered in foam. And the foam was raised to the level of the porch, and when he stepped back, he didn't realize that the porch had ended, and he fell backwards and fell right into the foam, almost like a cartoon. And we were all really concerned about him, and he got up, and then we just all started laughing, and it was really funny. And to this day, every time I see him, he blames me for pushing him when he was really just clumsy.
When I was brand new on the fire department, we got called to a vehicle accident in the irrigation canal, and I was leaning on a post writing the report since I was a new guy, and little did I know that vehicle had hit that post, and it broke. I fell into the water, completely submerged. Thank goodness nobody saw it, but I was completely wet and cold.
There's quite a bit of friendly banter between agencies and between different law enforcement people. Recently, I was on a scene with the Billings Police Department, and after that, about a week later, on the back of my sheriff patrol car, I found a decal that said, "Apply for the Billings Police Department."
A couple of my colleagues found a rattlesnake. They brought it into the station. The director said, "Is that a snake? You're fired."
One time at a local business in the Heights, we picked up a transient, and he was a regular for us, but this time he had a boombox with him, and he started to rap and dance for us before we took him to the hospital. And for some reason, that moment has stuck with me, because for me, that was a pretty funny moment.
Don't judge people by the color of their skin. Judge them by their words and actions.
Pain is weakness leaving the body.
People won't remember what you did or what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel.
It's an inanimate object. It can't win.
Treat everyone with respect, as you would want them to be treating you.
One of the sayings I say at work sometimes is treat every day like it's a Baja Blast, because it might be your Baja last.
Being a fourth grade teacher, we always come back to Disney quotes. So just keep swimming is one of my favorites. It gets me out of a lot of situations. When I'm really struggling, I just keep pushing. I just keep swimming.
If you treat a disease, you win some, you lose some. If you treat a person, you'll win no matter what.
My favorite saying is, slap some bacon on a biscuit, boys, we're burning daylight, from an old John Wayne movie.
I would encourage anyone interested in first responding to pursue this career, male or female. But specifically for the ladies, I think I always, as a younger person, thought you couldn't be a mother and be a firefighter, and it's absolutely doable.
You pay it forward. You help. It'll come back around when the time is needed, but you always help somebody in need.
So I can't think of any other job I would do besides a police officer, especially in this community. The community is very appreciative of what we do day in and day out, and that really keeps me enjoying my work and coming back every day.
I really enjoy Billings. It's a place that I've now called my home, and I love to be a part of helping keep this community safe and serving the community.
Being able to push myself and challenge myself in ways I never thought I could has been absolutely amazing. And I know anybody else in the first responder world would feel the same way.